This video is about calculating the costs per equivalent unit. The problem provides us with the work in process account of the baking department for the month of July. We are required to calculate the direct materials cost and the conversion cost per equivalent unit. We are also required to calculate the cost of the beginning work in process inventory that was completed in July, the cost of the units started and completed during July, and the cost of the ending work in process inventory. Before calculating the cost per equivalent unit, let's first calculate the equivalent units as to materials and conversion costs. We start with the beginning inventory of 8,000 units. All direct materials are placed in process at the beginning of production. Therefore, equivalent units with respect to direct materials are 0. The 8,000 units in the beginning inventory are 2/5 complete with respect to conversion costs, which is 40%. The remaining 60% of conversion costs is added in July. Therefore, equivalent units as to conversion costs are 4,800, which is 60% of 8,000 units. The number of units finished during the period was 157,400. Out of these, 8,000 units are from the beginning inventory. Hence, the units started and completed in July are 149,400 units, which are 100% complete as to materials and conversion costs. The equivalent units are 149,400 as to materials and conversion costs. Thus, the whole units transferred to finished goods in July are 157,400. The equivalent units as to direct materials are 149,400, and the equivalent units as to conversion costs are 154,200. The units of ending work in process inventory are 12,600, which is calculated by adding the beginning inventory of 8,000 plus units of raw materials placed into production during July of 162,000 and deducting units finished during July of 157,400. The 12,600 units are 100% complete as to materials. Therefore, the equivalent units as to materials are 12,600. The 12,600 units of ending work in process inventory are 3/5 or 60% complete as to conversion costs. Therefore, equivalent units as to conversion costs are 7,560 units, which is 60% of 12,600 units. Thus, the number of whole units is 170,000. Total equivalent units with respect to direct materials are 162,000 units, and with respect to conversion costs are 161,760 units. Now, let's compute the costs per equivalent unit. Let's first calculate the direct materials cost per equivalent unit. It is calculated by dividing the total direct materials cost for the period by the total equivalent units of direct materials. Thus, by dividing $307,800 by 162,000, we determine the direct materials cost per equivalent unit to be $1.90. Next, we calculate the conversion cost per equivalent unit by dividing the total conversion costs for the period by the total equivalent units of conversion costs. The total conversion costs include the direct labor cost of $43,600 plus the factory overhead cost of $21,104, which equals $64,704. Thus, by dividing $64,704 by the total equivalent units of conversion costs of 161,760, we determine the conversion cost per equivalent unit to be 40 cents. Now, we calculate the cost of the beginning work in process completed during July. The beginning balance of work in process of the baking department is $16,576. The conversion cost incurred during the period is $1,920, calculated by multiplying 4,800 units by 40 cents. Thus, the cost of beginning work in process completed in July is $18,496. Next, we calculate the cost of the units started and completed during July. The direct material cost per unit is $1.90, and the conversion cost per unit is 40 cents. Thus, the total cost of production per unit is $2.30. The units started and completed in July are 149,400. By multiplying $2.30 by 149,400, we determine the cost of the units started and completed during July to be $343,620. Finally, we calculate the cost of ending work in process. This includes direct materials cost incurred for 12,600 units at the rate of $1.90, which equals $23,940, and conversion costs incurred for 7,560 equivalent units at the rate of 40 cents, which equals $3,024. Thus, the total cost of ending work in process is $26,964. Let's assume that the direct materials cost is the same for June and July. Using the available information, we will find out whether the conversion cost per equivalent unit increase, decrease, or remain the same in July. We know that the work in process baking department has a balance of $16,576 as of July 1st. From this, we deduct the direct materials cost incurred in June of $15,200, which is calculated by multiplying the 8,000 units by the direct materials cost per equivalent unit of $1.90. Thus, the conversion cost incurred in June is $1,376. The conversion cost per equivalent unit for June is 43 cents, calculated by dividing the conversion cost of $1,376 by the 2/5 completed portion of the beginning inventory of 8,000 units. We have already calculated the July conversion cost per equivalent unit as 40 cents. From this, we deduct the June conversion cost per equivalent unit of 43 cents. Thus, we determine the decrease in conversion cost per equivalent unit as 3 cents.